The terrain was a strange configuration of the natural and the mechanical. Lush green foliage spilled across the rugged ground, the vibrancy of the plants contrasting against the cold sheen of scattered cybernetic capsules and supply boxes. Stone mushrooms dotted the landscape, towering like ancient sentinels, their surfaces weathered yet glowing faintly with etched runes. The hum of hidden machinery filled the air, a harmonious undertone blending with the rustle of leaves and the faint chirp of unseen creatures. Sparks flickered sporadically from the capsules, the faint scent of ozone mingling with the rich aroma of damp earth. Zephyr moved through the landscape with a measured grace, his dark cloak brushing against the tall grass that whispered in the soft breeze. His eyes, sharp and reflective, scanned the shimmering capsules and glinting machinery scattered around him. "Were you not supposed to be years out, Dreyfus?" he asked, his voice calm but introspective, as if addressing both the world and himself. The breeze carried his words across the terrain, rustling the foliage and sending faint ripples through the air, as though the environment itself listened. Zephyr paused, his gaze lingering on a capsule partially buried in the ground, its surface pulsing faintly with a cerulean glow. "Yet you find yourself here, and I with you," he murmured, his tone reflective. "As beauty comes to a close." The ground sloped downward before him, uneven and rugged, forcing him to tread carefully. Stone mushrooms loomed on either side, their bases entwined with vines that pulsed faintly, alive with some hidden energy. The mechanical hum grew softer as if retreating into the background, replaced by the faint click of distant clockwork. "The clock walks in timing I cannot understand," Zephyr said, his voice thoughtful. Somewhere in the distance, a soft mechanical click echoed, subtle but distinct. Zephyr tilted his head slightly, curiosity flashing in his eyes as he gazed upward. "Can you bring me insight on this?" he asked the unseen, "on the mechanics of clockwork." His steps carried him toward a cluster of stone mushrooms. Their etched surfaces glowed faintly, symbols shimmering as if responding to his presence. Zephyr's gaze sharpened, and his voice gained strength as he continued. "Of reality's creation, what is the protocol of dialogue and change?" His footsteps crunched against the gravel as he entered a clearing. In its center stood a white pedestal, stark against the verdant surroundings. Atop the pedestal rested a model of a blue dragon, its body adorned with industrial pipes and mechanical components. Small plumes of smoke escaped from its joints, curling into the air like the breath of a slumbering beast. Red stairs spiraled up its serpentine body, disappearing into a massive mechanical fortress etched into its back. Zephyr halted before the pedestal, his gaze on the model. "Hello, Dreyfus. I've come to understand work." The model responded immediately, its components clicking and whirring as they unfolded. Mechanical parts extended and interlocked, forming a full-scale clockwork dragon. Its serpentine body hovered slightly above the pedestal, undulating with a precision that was both mesmerizing and unsettling. "Good," Dreyfus said, his voice smooth and deliberate, resonating with the hum of the machinery around him. "Right on time." The dragon's glowing eyes narrowed slightly, its gaze fixed on Zephyr with an almost playful intensity. "You will complete your opus as the clock permits," Dreyfus continued, his voice almost teasing. "Ask yourself, Zephyr, why do you want to learn?" Dreyfus's body began to shift, elongating and flattening into a metallic table. On its surface, a diorama appeared, rendering an astronaut planting a flag under a star-filled sky. The image flickered and dissolved, replaced by a vision of a grand white castle. The castle crumbled into ruins, only to be rebuilt by ghostly figures that materialized from thin air. "What do you gain from the stress of it?" Dreyfus asked, his voice calm yet probing. Steam hissed from his shifting form, coalescing above him into a clock-adorned obelisk. The obelisk's hands spun rapidly before freezing, one pointing upward, the other downward. "The conclusion is not the magical act," Dreyfus said, his voice carrying a sense of ancient wisdom. "No, the magic is in the way to the conclusion, the moment of pen and paper." Zephyr watched as Dreyfus's shimmering blue hood revealed a single glowing eye. Steam hissed again, enveloping the clearing in a warm mist. When it cleared, Dreyfus's body had transformed into a small RC car. With a sharp rev of its motor, the car sped off, sparks flying in its wake. "The process," Zephyr mused quietly, watching Dreyfus vanish into the rugged terrain. "Oh, so it doesn't have to be another boss?" He resumed his walk, his steps steady and contemplative as he moved through the strange shifting landscape. "Upon opening my eyes, I see there could be other times, other lessons to consume." The terrain grew more uneven, the foliage thickening as Zephyr pushed forward. The hum of unseen machinery echoed faintly in the background, a persistent reminder of the fusion of nature and technology surrounding him. "I was not supposed to see you for 2 full rotations," he said, pausing at another glittering capsule protruding from the ground. Its surface pulsed faintly with blue light, casting an ethereal glow on his face. "And yet, here you are." He knelt briefly, his gaze intent. "So I could render assimilation," he said, his voice sharpening with determination. "That seems like the path of execution." Rising, he turned back to the path. "There is a lot more strength to be gathered in these other works." The path opened to another clearing, sunlight filtering through the trees to cast dappled shadows on the ground. Zephyr stepped into the light, his expression resolute. Of course, I'm going to go forward with the plan, he said, pausing to let a faint smile across his face. There could be much knowledge left on the table. The crunch of gravel beneath his boots and the distant whirs of machinery filled the air as he continued forward. So I must go under the pressure and climb the ranks, he said, his tone softening, almost wistful. If I didn't, I would regret this, I know deeply. Stopping at the edge of the terrain, Zephyr's gaze fixed on the shimmering horizon, where the landscape seemed to blur and shift with endless potential. So we must stay on the path we have set, he said. His voice was carrying a quiet certainty. A faint gust of wind rustled the grass around him as he began walking again. The true work is internal, he said. His voice was calm. That is what works the clock and grants us space. The terrain sloped downward, and Zephyr's shadows stretched long before him as he walked steadily toward the unknown. It's the pathways we unlock in every moment. That is what shows us the way, he said, his tone growing resolute. As he moved deeper into the enigmatic landscape, his figure became smaller against the vast expanse. His voice was faint. It will be a long mechanical process before it closes. The scene faded, leaving the sparkling terrain bathed in sunlight, the faint hum of the clock's mechanism lingering in the air.